Jay, that's strangely close to Daniel Jones from the Giants. Daniel, is that you? Beat the Chiefs. Show me. If the Broncos and Russell Wilson can show me that they can beat the Chiefs, then I will start believing.
The crowd up. And so are this defense, and Kansas City won't snap the ball again. The Denver Broncos have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs.
David Montgomery on the Lions, former Bear, gonna make this his revenge game for sure. David Montgomery gets the touchdown that ices the game. No! And there's a flag. There's flag. There's flag. There's flag. There's flag. Snap. Hold. Kick.
Denver wins! Denver wins! Let's go!
They open. No!
What happened? Oh shit.
Oh, I'm not Rick, but what is going on, y'all? Happy to be here this Monday. Tonight, we're going to be talking about 2024 NFL MVP dark horses. We're talking about guys that are not favorited to win NFL MVP. We got some non-quarterbacks thrown into the mix, as always. We are also going to be talking about Mike McCarthy reportedly getting fed up with the Cowboys owner, Jerry Jones, amongst a lot of people in the world. And then we're going to move on to Brandon Ayuk's trade rumors. Apparently, the receivers meeting with the 49ers amid a contract dispute. And then we're going to look at the top 20 running backs for the 2024 NFL season. CMC's on top of the list, along with Derrick Henry. We're going to go through it one by one and see what, if at all, or any, I probably will disagree with all of them. But that's all going to happen here tonight on the Only Football Podcast.
America is football. Football is America.
Football is America. If you don't like it, you can kiss your candy ass all the moment in time. I don't give a damn. Oh my God.
No!
You love it.
30-27. Chiefs win. Chiefs win 30-20.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of, you guessed it, the Only Football Podcast, where we only talk about football in its entirety. We're going to be covering a lot of exciting stuff, but I want to get us kicked off with NFL dark horses to win MVP. We got Bill in the chat. He says 650 subs. Is that new? I think we've been at 650 for a couple weeks, but every time I see it, it makes me happy. Couldn't have done it without you guys. Let's try to get those numbers up. As Matthew McConaughey would say in The Wolf of Wall Street, those are rookie numbers in this racket. I have at least 3,000 subscribers. I get one in the morning right when I wake up, and I get another one right after lunch. I don't want to. That's not why I do it. I do it because I need to. All right, we're dealing with digits, high frequency, all above the shoulders, acidic mustard shit. All right, we got to keep the rhythm below the belt. If not, you will tip over, and worse, I've seen it happen, implode. And we don't want to see that. In each NFL season, there's twists, turns, Cinderella stories. And if it weren't for all of those different things, it would be a pretty safe forecast to get the most surest candidates to be the NFL MVP. But as we're going to see, and I'm going to take you back a couple of years, that is not the case. Matter of fact, most... What is it, Murphy's Law? What can go wrong will go wrong. And if you look back at the favorites to win MVP in 2021, 2022, 2023, you see that it's mostly made up of a list of the top 5 quarterbacks the year before. And I mean, rightfully so. I mean, if you're gonna be the casino and you have to make the most sure bet, of course, Patrick Mahomes is going to be number one. Of course, Josh Allen's going to be up there. But in reality, as we will see when we go back in time today, That rarely happens, right? It rarely happens where you have a player that plays at a top 3 level and the very next year he does it. And the quarterbacks that do that, I said do, the quarterbacks that do that are normally generational type players like Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you're also going to have some other players that you're going to know, but let's take a look at some of the dark horse candidates. And I just got bit by a mosquito right on my lower back. Okay, so we're going to start by taking a look at the 2024 MVP odds as it stands right now, because I think that's really important. Okay. Can Patrick Mahomes follow up his third Super Bowl MVP performance by claiming a third MVP? Of course, he's going to make the list. Right behind Mahomes at number 1, unsurprisingly, is Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen. However, what could be surprising to some is that the reigning MVP Lamar Jackson for the Baltimore Ravens is tied for 5th at plus 1,400 odds. And in front of Jackson is CJ Stroud, who's tied for 2nd, and Joe Burrow, who's at 3rd. Okay, lastly, one young quarterback has made a slight jump up the odds board after opening up at plus 3,500. Anthony Richardson's odds have risen to plus 3,000. Plus 3,000 is still not the best odds, but honestly, I don't know if I don't think those odds are fair. I think the house is going to lose a lot of money. I don't know. Well, the thing is if the house knows that the odds are, I don't know. I try to think about who would place this bet, and it would have to be somebody that is hoping to get a large amount of money for a lot of return for a small investment when you have odds like that. But I just don't see it happening. Anthony Richardson winning MVP. I think there's a couple players I would look at that have a much better shot to do it. So we're going to look. I mean, Anthony Richardson threw for 577 yards and he ran for 136, and he had 7 touchdowns in the 4 games that he started. He did exit 2 of those 4 games early with an injury. And of course, he had the season-ending shoulder injury in week 5. But if you're expecting him to have a breakout season, maybe you like the plus 3,000 odds. Maybe Anthony Richardson, who was drafted very, very high after showcasing athleticism that is very rare to find at the quarterback position, maybe now it is his time to take over for the Colts and prove to everybody why he was drafted as high as he was, because Anthony Richardson was always a project. Maybe that injury helped him, able to learn the game mentally and let the mental side of football catch up to his athletic ability. Maybe this is the perfect thing for Richardson in hindsight. But we're going to take a look at the full updated MVP board we're using, DraftKings Sportsbook, as of June 16th. So you got Patrick Mahomes at number 1 with plus 450. And that means you bet $10 to win 55. Josh Allen, plus 850. Bet $10 to win 905. That doesn't seem right. Does that seem right? Yeah, that's right. Okay. So how does Mahomes at plus 450, $10 only gets you 55? I mean, but then you go to Josh Allen and $10 gets you 905. I guess they double. That's the thing about the odds, though. So you go from plus 450 to plus 850. So it nearly doubles. Okay. But if you look at the win, $55, in your head, you say, well, let's just double that. Of course, Josh Allen will win $110 if Mahomes wins 55 with plus 450. And it's like, no. He wins 905. That's how the odds work. And that's why it's so important to find odds that you really believe in. And here is my odds that I fully believe in. Oh, no, this is a typo. This is a typo, ladies and gentlemen. We have a typo. I found it right here. I'm going to show you this, foxsports.com. Here we go. I'm going to show you all the typo. This is my favorite thing to do. All right. Here we go. All right, as you can see right here at number 1, we have Mahomes, $10 to win 55. Coming in at number 2, we have Josh Allen, $10 to win 905. But then right below, CJ Stroud has the same odds as Josh Allen, and it's $10 to win 95. This is supposed to say $95, not $905. So whoever wrote this article for Fox Sports, you need to get your ducks in a row before you blast this stuff onto the internet. We will continue. Joe Burrow has the 4th best odds. $10 wins you $100. Jordan Love coming in at 5th, which is pretty remarkable just in his 2nd full season as the Packers starting quarterback. But, I mean, we saw what we saw last season. He looked like a totally different player than the person that we saw start. So I think you look at the trajectory that he was on, and yeah, MVP is not off the table. And it looks like the sports book, they realized that as well. Because if not, there was probably going to be a lot of people that would have loved, no pun intended, to get in on plus 3,000 odds. But the house knows there's a good chance of this. Jordan Love plus 1,400. Then you have Lamar Jackson tied plus 1,400 as well. And Brock Purdy. So Brock Purdy, Lamar Jackson, and Jordan Love all tied plus 1,400 odds. Then you have Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott all tied with plus 1,600 odds. $10 wins 170. Then you have Justin Herbert plus 2,000 odds. Tua Tagovailoa plus 2,200. Anthony Richardson and Matthew Stafford tied. How in the world, and Trevor Lawrence, how is Anthony Richardson tied with Matthew Stafford and Trevor Lawrence to win MVP? Somebody, please explain that to me. Do they know something we don't? Because this sounds crazy. Now, quarterbacks normally dominate the MVP odds list, and that's why I'm really excited to break down some of these dark horses, because dark horse candidates largely are not going to be quarterbacks. The non-QB with the shortest odds is CMC at plus 4,000, followed by Tyreek Hill at plus 7,500. The last non-QB to win MVP, just to remind everybody, was Adrian Peterson in 2012. That was a remarkable season. Stroud entering his 2nd year in the league. Big expectations. 9-6 as a starter, led the Texans to an AFC divisional match against the Browns. Let it fly. He got a great rapport with Nico Collins and Tank Dell. He threw for 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, only 5 picks, and completed 64% of his passes. And that was with Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Now you add in Stephon Diggs, and I think if I had to place a bet right now, you said place the safest bet. CJ Stroud to win MVP would be my bet. And I think maybe if Lamar Jackson didn't have such a great season last year, CJ Stroud could have won it last year. But there was a lot of great quarterback play last year. Even Dak Prescott was having a really good season. So Bill says right here, those 3 being tied makes 0 sense, LOL. Anthony Richardson, Matthew Stafford, Trevor Lawrence. First off, if I had to rank these, I think it's possible that Matthew Stafford goes on a Super Bowl run. He wants to hang up the cleats. I know they all want to do it, but the difference is Matthew Stafford is actually good enough to do it. We saw him win a Super Bowl his first year with the Rams. We saw that team come into full form late last season. We saw the weapons. They had another good draft. Sean McVay has a pep back in his step. He feels like a spring chicken. The vibes are really good around LA right now. If you're a Rams fan, you really believe you have a shot to win the Super Bowl. That is not a joke. I know it's a tough division. You're going to probably end up playing the 49ers in the playoffs eventually, whether it's in the first round or the third. But, I mean, to put Matthew Stafford with Anthony Richardson is insane. I mean, it is really makes me wonder what they know about Anthony Richardson. I know, like I said, his numbers were pretty good, but I'm just a little shocked by that. Okay. So every season presents a compelling case for a few dark horse candidates, at least to merit some consideration. Often it's just for a few weeks at a time. They might be quarterbacks, but maybe not the ones we expect. They might even be a non-quarterback, and that's what we're going to talk about. Adrian Peterson, like I said, was the last one to do it in 2012. It's been a long time. Before Peterson, the last non-QB was LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006. And if you remember that 2006 season, I believe LT broke the record for most touchdowns in a single season, if I'm not mistaken. LT, most rushing TD in single season. I think it was total touchdowns. Yeah. LaDainian Tomlinson has the most rushing touchdowns in a season with 28. Okay. That record stands to this day. So if you wanted to look at what it takes for a non-QB to win the NFL MVP, I can give you your answer right now. Okay. Having a remarkable season, having a legendary season, that's not what's going to do it. I mean, you're going to need that, but you're going to need one more thing. You need to break a record that has been standing for a long time. And a quarterback can't do it in the same year. I'll put it this way. When Peyton Manning beat Tom Brady's record of throwing 50 touchdown passes, he threw 55. He wins the MVP. If someone breaks that record that was set by Manning in 2013, if somebody breaks that record that is still standing 11 years later, that quarterback, no matter who it is going to win MVP. If that doesn't happen, now we can entertain some other non-QBs. We talked about it last week on the podcast. If Tyreek Hill beats Calvin Johnson's single season receiving yards, he will win MVP. If a running back rushes for more than 28 touchdowns, he will win MVP. LaDainian Tomlinson did it in 2006. Before that, you have Sean Alexander and Priest Holmes, who both got 27. And keep in mind, guys, this was in a 16-game schedule. So the fact that some of these records haven't been broken is even more crazy because there's an extra game being played. I understand that a lot of times the players still will sit out that game, but not all the time. I mean, there's only a few teams that are resting starters. The fact that none of these records have even been broken is really crazy. I mean, you got 2006 LT, Sean Alexander in 2005, Priest Holmes in 2003, Emmitt Smith in 1995, Priest Holmes again with 21 in 2002. And I mean, let's just see the most recent one. Guys, it was Raheem Mostert last year with 15. Or no, he only played 15 games. He had 18 touchdowns. Did anybody realize Raheem Mostert last year? I know people recognize he led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. But did anybody really realize that he came 15th all time? I mean, that's a pretty big deal. But if you look at these stats, you see Jamal Williams the year before last year for the Lions, who led the NFL in rushing touchdowns, even though a lot of them came on the goal line. He had 17 rushing touchdowns, and that puts him 25th all time. So these records have been standing still for a very long time. And if a running back, I'll say Christian McCaffrey, if he can rush for more than 28 touchdowns, then yeah, he'll definitely win MVP, I think. If Tyreek Hill has the 2,000-yard season that he's hoping for, then he will do it. The record is 1,964 yards. It will eventually fall. There's an extra game. The offense is more the game is trending offensively. Defenses are not able to do what they used to do. Every single offseason, the defense loses another tool in their toolkit. This year, it was the hip drop. Okay. Tyreek Hill was ahead of Calvin Johnson's pace for most of 2023 until the late season ankle injury. And that ended up limiting him to 1,799 yards. But Tyreek Hill had the kind of performance to actually break that record. For a wide receiver to win MVP, by the way, it's never happened. It's going to require a truly extraordinary season, and Tyreek Hill is the guy that's capable of it, thanks to not just the fact that he's a great route runner, but how electrifying he is after catching the ball. He turns 10-yard receptions into 80-yard touchdowns all the time. That's what's going to get him the numbers that he's looking for. And it makes you really appreciate Calvin Johnson, because Calvin Johnson was great after the catch. I mean, he was a great all-around receiver. But Tyreek Hill, when I think of Tyreek Hill, I know Calvin Johnson was also really fast. But I would think of Calvin Johnson more as a 50-50 go up and get it kind of a guy, which makes, in my opinion, makes it more impressive than somebody that's just really good with yards after the catch. We got Bill. He said, need 10 minutes. I'll be back. We got Nash Prod in the chat. What's up, Nash? Happy to have you in here. Yeah, Tyreek Hill, he could do it, but he's going to need to break Calvin Johnson's record. Miami did not clear 20 points in either of their final two regular season games when Tyreek Hill wasn't on the field. So you see how valuable he is to the team. That's another thing that is that gets weighed in when they're trying to decide who the MVP is. And sometimes when a player's not on the field, you actually get to notice how valuable he is. Well, Miami saw that to close its final two games last season. Like I said, they couldn't score 20 points without their best player on the field. Christian McCaffrey, I don't think that this one is going to take much convincing. He's the reigning offensive player of the year. He finished third in MVP voting last year. He probably has the best chance of any player to break the non-QB stronghold on the award. Depending on how you define MVP, you can make a strong case that McCaffrey shouldn't even be a dark horse. Remember what this team looked like before CMC was acquired by the Panthers and what they've looked like since. The 49ers have turned into one of the hardest teams to beat since acquiring CMC. In 2023, he led the NFL in touches, 339, volume, scrimmage yards, 2,023 scrimmage yards, and scrimmage touchdowns, 21 overall. And in his career, he averages 115 scrimmage yards per game. That's third all time, behind only Jim Brown and Barry Sanders. If there's a player that is going to do it, CMC is going to be that guy. You need somebody to have a season that we haven't seen since Adrian Peterson. This is the guy to do it. I'm also going to throw this out there because a lot of people say it doesn't matter what team you're on. Look, it matters. If you're on a contending team, that will almost certainly be a factor. If you're one of the teams that is in the NFC Championship, you're probably got the MVP on your team. I don't think that's a coincidence. So, and even if you say, no, I don't believe that comes into play at all, fine. But it's definitely not going to hurt his chances that he's going to be on a contending team that will be playing meaningful games down the stretch. When voters are deciding their votes, and these are the moments that they're watching, it's going to help him. Running backs have been devalued in the NFL the last couple of years. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast. Why can't running backs get paid? But McCaffrey is special enough to stand out, and that's why he did get paid. That's why he's the cover of Madden. And you could hardly say he's a dark horse. But still, he is past 10th in odds. You got quarterbacks, and then you got CMC and Tyreek Hill, in my opinion. Those are the two players. But you notice something, right? We're doing the same thing that they did in 2021. What are we doing? We're taking the best seasons from last year, and we're saying if it happens this year, just a little bit better, they'll win MVP. Well, that's what happens every single season, okay? I'm going to give you an example. We're going to look at the 2022 odds, okay? In 2022, the performances that they would be looking at was 2021. So in 2022, the NFL odds preseason had Josh Allen at plus 700 with the best odds. Then Mahomes, then Justin Herbert. And you might be thinking Justin Herbert was third. Well, yeah, Justin Herbert was third because let's look at the 2021 season. He threw for 5,000 yards, 65.9 completion percentage. Like I said, 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns to only 15 picks. He had his best season in 2021, and that's why he was third on the MVP list going into 2022. Okay. Let's look at Josh Allen. Okay. Josh Allen in 2022 had the best odds. Well, in 2021, he had 36 touchdowns to 15 picks, 4,407 yards. But remember, this is why it matters, the kind of games that you play, because the last game of the season was that historical game with Mahomes that changed the overtime rules. That was the last we saw of Josh Allen. And everybody was just like, the Bills are going to the Super Bowl. They're going to win it. Josh Allen's MVP. And that just, I think, alludes to my point that it does matter the kind of football games you're playing down the stretch. Okay? Patrick Mahomes, we don't have to dive into that. Tom Brady, I mean, he's coming off a Super Bowl. And then you have Russell Wilson. No. 2021, he was coming off of 2021. No, he won the Super Bowl in 2020. Well, technically it was 2021. No, we're good. Yeah, he did. And then Russell Wilson. No, I got this wrong because Russell Wilson wasn't a Bronco. Regardless, Tom Brady is always going to be on this list. Russell Wilson's first year with the Broncos, he actually was fifth. He had better odds to win than Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. That was, it seems funny now, but that we were just taking all of the data we had up to that point. But some of these guys get hurt. Some of these guys bust. Could have used a better word, but some of these guys don't pan out. Simply put, some of these guys hit a wall. Some of these guys are going to be exactly what we think they're going to be. If you look at the 2023 odds? Here it is. The 2023 odds, which is last year, had Patrick Mahomes at plus 600. Patrick Mahomes coming off of a Super Bowl win against the Eagles. Okay? So there he is at the very top. Then you got Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow lost to Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship. Then you have Josh Allen. Then you have Jalen Hurts, who was in that Super Bowl. And then you have Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence. But you look at these top guys. I mean, Jalen Hurts, the 2023, he was fourth best odds. He went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, and they say when you look at Justin Herbert on the other side, the Chargers are going to have to win their division before there's any MVP talk, just because of the fact that if you're the best in the National Football League, you got to be able to beat your divisional opponents. But Herbert is the key to all of the Chargers' success, but they were not coached very well under Brandon Staley. Now you got Jim Harbaugh coming in, and you might actually say, hey, we've seen enough. That 5,000-yard season was not a fluke. And there's a couple players that I want to give a shout out to as we look at this year's dark horse candidates to win MVP, because I mentioned Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey, but there's a couple other players that I don't think are getting the love that they deserve, including quarterbacks, not just non-quarterbacks, okay? So I want to start with Jared Goff. Jared Goff. This one, I hope I don't have to work too hard to convince you. The Lions broke through last year. They choked in the NFC Championship game. They were going to the Super Bowl, and this team just kind of fell apart. But I don't want to focus on that. The reason this team broke through and played so well in the playoffs is because Goff ascended to the top level of his entire career. He's playing the best ball he's ever played. He had the best completion percentage of his career, 67.3. He threw for 30 touchdown passes, only 12 interceptions. That's why he gets the 4-year, $212 million extension. When they drafted Hooker? Was it Hooker? I think out of Tennessee. I was thinking to myself, why even make that draft pick? Jared Goff's your guy. And now with this extension, I really don't get it. But the Lions have a really, really good chance of sneaking Jared Goff into the MVP race if they go out and they're 11-1 by week 12. I mean, that's just the way it goes. Ben Johnson was one of the hottest head coach candidates. He decides not to leave. If Ben Johnson would have taken a job somewhere else, maybe I go, yeah, I'm not sure about Jared Goff. I mean, look what happened to Jalen Hurts when he lost his coordinator. This entire team is sticking together. They are young. They are hungry. Jared Goff just got paid, and Ben Johnson wanted to stick around for another year. Why? To give the Lions and Goff continuity so they could win a Super Bowl and finish the job. I mean, in the words of Kobe Bryant on June 24, 2024, job finish? Job finish? I don't think so. The job is not finished, and they are here for one reason, to win a Super Bowl. And if the Lions are, let's say, 13-4, and they are going to the Super Bowl, don't be surprised if Jared Goff is accepting his MVP virtually, because he will be practicing for the Super Bowl when the awards are going on. Another player that I wanted to talk about, and Amon-Ra St. Brown locked in with a new contract. There's a potential that he takes another big step. I mean, look, Goff's going to put himself in the conversation among the NFL's best, not just, he's a top 12 guy. You can win a Super Bowl with a top 12 guy. Knock it off. Jared Goff is not a top 12 quarterback, and he's going to prove it this year. We talked about CMC. We talked about Tyreek Hill. But here's one that I really don't think is getting enough credit. And I don't know why this is happening, but when I mentioned my dark horse playoff team, it makes sense that in my dark horse playoff team, the quarterback would be a dark horse MVP candidate. Kyler Murray. Listen, when he's healthy, he is very, very effective on the field. He said that he had one of the best off seasons in his career. He had a very strong finish to the end of last season. He didn't return till week 10 from his ACL injury last year, but the Cardinals really took off in their final 4 games, and I wrote down his numbers here. He completed 70% of his passes, 935 yards, 7 touchdowns to 3 interceptions in that span. The Cardinals led the league in total offense with 414 yards per game. That was once Kyler Murray got back to form. That was Kyler Murray with a first-time head coach. That was Kyler Murray without DeAndre Hopkins on the team. This is a team. I mean, now they got Marvin Harrison Jr. They got a lot of Trey Benson's running the football. This team is going to come out and be good. I'm not going to say they're going to be great, but I think they're going to be good. I really do. And I think it's going to surprise a lot of people because we are so scope locked on what happened last year as fans of the game. Marvin Harrison Jr., who everyone was raving about this whole offseason, is added to the team. When Kyler Murray is healthy, he's one of the most exciting players in football. And the Cardinals they're going to have to win a lot more games for Kyler Murray to catch MVP votes. But on the flip side of that, one of the ways to really get a big reaction out of people is shock and surprise. The fact that the expectations are so low that if Kyler Murray goes out there and let's say they're competing for first in their division, that's going to bump him way up because it's the same thing with CJ Stroud. This was a rebuild. What are they doing winning most of their games? That's going to catch their eyes. If Kyler Murray picks up where he left off last year, and if Marvin Harrison really explodes onto the scene as a rookie, Murray could position himself to be in the conversation for MVP. And we got Bill back. What's up, Bill? Happy to have you back. And Nash says, hi, Bill. How's your day going? Next on the list, and this is a long shot. This is the longest of long shots. Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons. Because the last time a defensive player won it was 1986, which was nearly 40 years ago. And the one to do it was, guess who? Bill knows. I won't even say it. I'll let Bill put it in the chat. I won't even give you a hint about it. You know who it was. That's a pretty high bar for Micah Parsons to reach. And Parsons is much more likely to secure maybe Defensive Player of the Year. But Parsons is a star that has the ability to be disruptive, productive on that defense. And if the Cowboys have, let's say, the top defense in the league and Micah Parsons leading the NFL in sacks, maybe he could become at least in the conversation. The X factor for Parsons is how new defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer deploys him. He could set Parsons loose, and the Cowboys could continue to be a dominant team. They've won 12 games in McCarthy's last 3 years. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. But if we were going to at least include one defensive player in our dark horse list, I think you got to go with Micah Parsons. And, Bill said, wait, what was the question? Oh, okay, LT. Yes, of course, LT. LT merely the greatest defensive player to ever play. He was the last one to win MVP. And Bill said, Tibbs and him were talking at the Giants 100 celebration at MSG. That's awesome to see one generation to the next. And Thibodeau's got those type of expectations on himself. Okay. This one, look, I said it earlier. I don't think he should be a dark horse. But I consider him a dark horse because when you look at the odds for 2024, okay, the fact that CJ Stroud is not in the top 4, that Jordan Love has better odds, I had to put it on this list, okay? Stroud is not going to be a dark horse for much longer. If you even count this one as a dark horse, some people may say, dude, you're in the top 10. You're not a dark horse. But I think Stroud is going to make a leap from being Offensive Rookie of the Year to MVP. He could have won it last year. You add Diggs. I brought this back up yesterday. Every time a receiver like Diggs, Terrell Owens, Randy Moss, every time a receiver in their prime went to a new team, their first year with that new team was one of their best seasons they had. Last time Diggs' first year with Buffalo was his best season to date as a wide receiver. I expect that kind of production out of him his first year. And if he does have that kind of production, of course, this is going to be one of the best offenses in the league. led by one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So Stroud's already on the MVP radar, but I think he should be around 2 or number 3. And let's say the Texans come out and they do have the best offense. I expect by maybe week 5 or week 6 for CJ Stroud to be elevated to the favorite or at least second favorite to win it. Here is, I don't know if you'll agree. I don't know if you'll disagree, but we talked about Tyreek Hill getting 2,000 yards receiving. Now, if he does that, would Tua Tagovailoa be in the MVP conversation? Because he really hasn't in previous seasons. He dealt with a lot of injuries 2 years ago. But this season could be a little bit different because last year Tua stayed healthy the entire year, and he actually had a career high in completion percentage, 69.3, yardage, and touchdown passes. And he led the league in passing yards with 4,624. That's crazy. 4,624. Justin Herbert had over 5,000 in 2021, his second year as a player. Just to put into perspective how good Justin Herbert was. A 5,000 yard season for a quarterback is very, very, very good and really hard to come by. So we talked about Tyreek Hill. He's going to be back healthy. Jalen Waddle just signed his new contract. I just think that if this is the best offense in the league, that Tua is going to be in the conversation because that's the way it works. But I think it also depends on what the Dolphins do. And I'll propose this question to you. If you have a team that is giving up a league high, let's say 28 points per game, and you are 10-0 because you're averaging 35 points per game, do you think that the people that decide who wins MVP would say, man, they have a bad defense and this quarterback's overcoming all of that, and that even raises how people feel about you? Or do you think if the Dolphins had a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense, that would ultimately help Tua? Because I said, let's say they have one of the worst defenses and there's a couple games that they lose because Tua just can't score enough points. The defense is just that bad. I'm not predicting that to happen, but let's say week 10, they're 6-4, but this is the best offense. Is that more favorable than a Dolphins team with a top 5 offense and defense that's 8-2 by week 10? It's a valid question. And for Tua, he also packed on weight last year, and this year he slimmed down again. Apparently, he's hoping to regain his mobility that was compromised because he put on that weight. Hopefully that doesn't mean that he's going to be dealing with any injuries. I always say if it's not broke, don't fix it. But he's going to lose that weight and try to get his mobility back. We've seen quarterbacks do this. I think Lamar Jackson did it, put on some extra weight, and it was like, you find a playing weight that you really love. It's hard to move outside of that. If Tua can manage the balancing act between the balancing act of being mobile, throwing the football, and using the dominant running game that they had last season, the numbers should be really high for Tua, and the Dolphins are going to try their best to avoid the late season collapse. But a lot of that had to do with Tyreek Hill not being on the field. I just don't know. It's like the Brock Purdy thing. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle having such a great season because of Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa, or is Tua benefiting from one of the best supporting casts in the NFL? And because that question is even in our minds, same with Brock Purdy, he's going to have to be even more special to get the credit that is the credit that will ultimately land Tua in the MVP conversation. Okay. I don't know why, but for some reason we just pick our quarterbacks. We go, you know what? This quarterback's just a system quarterback. I don't know if people get jealous of the roster or they truly think, hey, this is just a loaded roster. Anybody could thrive in this offense. But we've also seen when Tua is not in the game, the team not look so good. The fact that the Dolphins haven't paid him yet, even though the contract talks are going on, tells you that maybe there's people even inside the building that feel that way about Tua. So Tua, this is a contract season. If he goes out and leads the NFL in passing yards again and has and ends up top 5 in touchdown passes, and Tyreek Hill breaks a record, like a lot of people are going to say, no, Tyreek Hill isn't the MVP. Tua is the MVP. And that would be really interesting to see how that would be juggled. I do think if Tyreek Hill beats a record that was set all the way back in 2012 of the last non-quarterback to win it, or the running back, the Calvin Johnson. When did he set that record? Calvin Johnson. I wrote it down up here. Calvin Johnson. Oh, no, I didn't write down the year. I just wrote down the yards, 1,964 yards. So whatever, I think that happened in probably like 2008 or something. But if he breaks that record, there's going to be people on both sides. And Bill said, hit the like, it's free, and boost the signal for the algo. Thank you, Bill. Yes, please hit the like button. Nash says, I'm good. I'm coming back home from a day of swimming with my cousins. That's awesome. I actually went to the pool today. I got out of work, went right to the pool, enjoyed some peace and quiet, went to the gym and jumped on the podcast. But it's been a really beautiful day here in Tennessee. So those are my dark horses to win MVP. And there's one other player that isn't really being mentioned that I'm going to mention. First, I'm going to give you the bonus pick. You have CJ Stroud, another young quarterback that I think would be a safe-ish bet if you wanted to bet $10 and win $100, would be Jordan Love. The second half of Green Bay's season last year and the performance he had was one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Green Bay now has a young cast of receivers. We heard Jordan Love come out saying, we don't need a number one receiver. We're just going to distribute the ball, and it'll be a different guy every single week. You add Josh Jacobs. So a higher scoring offense is what the Packers are probably going to have this year, and they were 12th in points last year. So that would boost Jordan Love's profile even more. He is on track to becoming a full-blown star. He had 32 touchdowns and just 11 picks hit in his first season as the starter for one of the league's most high-profile teams, especially at this position. And the moment was not too big for him. The only thing that could get in his way is that the Packers probably have to take on the Lions a couple seasons. And if Jared Goff is at the top of the NFC North, it's going to be the same thing with Justin Herbert can't win it unless they're above the Chiefs in the division. I could see that being an Achilles heel for the Packers. But with that comes an opportunity. If Jordan Love is, let's say the Lions and Packers are both really good and Jordan Love goes toe-to-toe with Jared Goff and wins that game, that could take him over the top. Like CJ Stroud, Jordan Love's not going to be a dark horse for a very long time, so enjoy it. This is probably his last year doing it. But those are my 2024 MVP dark horses this year. And Bill says, I could see Love getting it, and I love this comment. One other player. It's Tommy DeVito, isn't it? And it is Tommy DeVito. I was waiting to do this one. I wanted to wait. But Tommy DeVito could be the MVP this year. Advanced analytics say that Tommy DeVito is playing at an MVP level and is the second best rookie quarterback in last season's class. Quarterbacks, and I'm going to give you some stats to back this up. QBs this season with a plus 750 win percentage and a 95 pass rating, minimum of 100 attempts, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy, and Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito has 100-plus passer rating in each of his last 3 games. No QB in the NFL has a longer active streak. Most pass-plus rushing touchdowns among rookie QBs. You got C.J. Stroud in first, and then you got Tommy DeVito tied with the number 1 overall pick last year with 9. So you look at all of these stats on Tommy DeVito, and I know a lot of people really like Tommy Tuggs, but I'm fine with the prediction that Tommy DeVito could win the MVP this year. I think it could happen. You look at the numbers and the advanced analytics, and they tell you that Tommy DeVito played at an MVP level last year, and he was the second best rookie quarterback in that class. So could Tommy DeVito burst onto the scene this season? Probably not. But like Jin just said, Tommy D pulls mad bitches, and Bill said, "You are too nice to me." And Nash says, hopefully neighbor turns out better than Tony. And it's funny because we're talking about Tommy DeVito, assuming Daniel Jones isn't going to be the starter. I don't know if it's safe to assume that, but I would imagine Drew Lock would be number 2. So for Tommy DeVito to win MVP, I'll put it this way. A lot has to go wrong for the Giants this year. But if Tommy DeVito is in the MVP conversation, then you guys will be thankful that everything that went wrong went wrong. Of course, you're never hoping for an injury, but you get what I'm saying. So those are the dark horses to win MVP. And Nash said, for Bill's sanity, anyone watching this back later is going to think you're insane. That's good. Shock and surprise. We'll get maybe some subscribers. Another thing that I wanted to talk about today. Of course, Jerry Jones came out and said that we are all in, took all the chips, pushed them to the middle of the table, and right now things are not so good in Jerry land. Mike McCarthy reportedly is getting fed up with the Cowboys owner, Jerry Jones, per a report. Mike McCarthy's name may soon be added to the list of former Cowboys coaches who are tired of working with Jerry Jones. McCarthy is entering his 5th and final season under contract, and ex-Cowboy personnel said that he's fed up. He's just fed up. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. McCarthy apparently isn't the only one that's getting upset with Jerry Jones right now. Jerry Jones, this dysfunction goes back all the way to 1989, where he owns and operates the franchise since he purchased it. And I remember growing up, I didn't even understand the business of football, but I remember my dad always saying that Jerry Jones gets in the way of his team, and that his hands-on approach is actually his fault. He has long held the reputation of being a hands-on owner, and it's not, the results are in, right? I mean, the results are in. I think it's cool for an owner to be hands-on. Of course, Pat Bowlen was really hands-on, but you also need accountability. And sometimes you have somebody that makes themselves a god in the franchise, and it ends up being the downfall, right? Pride before the fall. So McCarthy, dealing with some contract disputes we'll talk about. Bill Parcells, who left New England following a Super Bowl appearance because of his inability to coexist with Patriots owner Robert Kraft, said that he had a positive experience working for Jones during his 4-year stint in Dallas from 2003 to 2006. And this is what Bill Parcells said last fall. I enjoyed working for Jerry. I learned a lot about the business side of the game. I found him to be very supportive. He was a great person who did a lot for a lot of people. His word was good. I really liked him. So Jerry Jones what's going on right now with McCarthy, apparently it's contract disputes. That's what's happening right now. The Cowboys lost Tony Pollard. They lost Tyler Baidaz in free agency. They have pending contract situations with their three biggest stars, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and Dak Prescott. Those contract situations have created distractions throughout the offseason, and training camp opens up next month. And then we get to Mike McCarthy. The uncertain future of Mike McCarthy, which he is just getting fed up with. He was on the hot seat when the Packers were upset by the Packers. And you remember Jerry Jones came out and said, we're not going to fire him. McCarthy is set to enter the 2024 season as a coach without an extended contract. It's a prove-it year for Mike McCarthy. And this is what's worth noting is that Mike McCarthy, I said it earlier, went 12-5 the past 3 seasons in Dallas, but they went 1-3 in playoff games. Now, going 12-5 3 years in a row doesn't scream fire the head coach. It just doesn't. I know how frustrating it is that they just can't get it done, but if you have a coach that's getting you 12 wins every single year, it's really hard for me to believe that getting rid of that guy is going to give you a better chance of winning the Super Bowl moving forward. And that's all this is about at this point. Now, there was a coach that won a lot of football games and ended up getting fired. Okay. Now, January 13th in 2011, John Fox became the 14th head coach of the Denver Broncos on a 4-year, $14 million deal. Okay. April of 2012, John Fox gets this contract. That is the same season that Peyton Manning became a Bronco. The Broncos won their last 11 games in a row after a 2-3 start, and it was a Baltimore Ravens, Jacoby Jones, Hail Mary. That's what beat us in the playoffs. I mean, and then the Ravens went on to win the Super Bowl. So, in my opinion, like that Broncos team could have won the Super Bowl that year. Okay. Then in 2013, Peyton Manning threw for almost 5,500 yards and 55 touchdowns, both world records. And the offense combined for 7,317 yards, also a record. I just want to keep repeating this stuff because I really want people to understand that the 2013 Denver Broncos is the best offense in NFL history, and it's not a big debate in my opinion. Like people talk about the Patriots in 2010. This team was better. The Dan Marino and the Dolphins, the greatest show on turf. No, this is the best team offensively in history. I'm biased, but they shattered almost every record that year. Okay. So John Fox had a really good season and then 43-8 in the Super Bowl. We don't need to talk about that. And then 2014, so Fox's third year with the Broncos. Okay, so far we have John Fox winning 12 games each season. Okay, and then we get to 2014, and Fox coached the Broncos to another strong season. They finished the regular season 12-4 again. They earned AFC's number 2 seed and a first-round playoff bye, hosting Peyton Manning's former team, the Colts. I was at that game. That was a really sad game. The Broncos were upset 24-13, eliminated from the playoffs. And then on January 12th, the day after Denver lost in the divisional round, Fox and the Broncos mutually agreed to part ways. Why am I talking about this? Because I don't have a ton of examples to give you with a quarterback or a head coach that does so well with the team and gets fired. It's not very common that you win 12 games 3 years in a row and lose your job, but it does happen if the expectations are truly to win a Super Bowl, because everyone has, of course, those expectations, but let's say the 49ers, okay? Let's say the 49ers with this team just can't get, you can't get fired after going to the Super Bowl. But let's say that they just keep losing in the playoffs. Eventually, you're going to go, well, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck because this coach is getting us to these important games, but he's not delivering when we get here. And the question is, okay, if you're going to fire him, who do you replace him with that gives you a better shot to win the Super Bowl? Fox is only the second head coach in NFL history to win 4 straight division titles since joining a new team. And he's also the only head coach in Broncos history to have never missed the playoffs in their entire tenure as a head coach. And yet John Fox gets fired because this team is too good to not be in a Super Bowl. This team was too good to lose at home and only score 13 points. So he gets fired. And some people say that's crazy. This is just like Mike McCarthy. Exactly where McCarthy is right now is where John Fox was. You lose to the Packers in a playoff game when you had such a great season. You're 12-4. You're the number 2 seed, first round playoff bye, and then you get beat at home by a team that shouldn't beat you, and the head coach, in this case, gets fired. Now, Mike McCarthy is keeping his job this year, but this is his prove-it year. And you might say, well, what happened after that? The Broncos hired Gary Kubiak, and Gary Kubiak became one of the only coaches to win a Super Bowl in his first season as the Denver Broncos head coach. Okay? So it looked crazy when it was happening, but in hindsight, John Fox wasn't demonstrating that he could get this team over that hump. And then Gary Kubiak comes in and does it in his first year. So this is my frame of reference for the situation that Mike McCarthy finds himself in. McCarthy likely wants to continue coaching in Dallas, assuming that the Cowboys find a way to keep those core pieces together that are up for a contract. The question is whether or not McCarthy wants to keep working with Jerry Jones, and of course, vice. So, I don't know if Mike McCarthy is a really great coach or he's just had pretty good quarterbacks. He's got to be a great play caller. I mean, he was good with the Packers for so long. He's been good with the Cowboys since he got there. We do have a couple messages. Bill says your dad was right about the dysfunction. You guys still have styrofoam cups out there. Been pretty much banned in California forever. The only place that uses them is Chick-fil-A. This is actually a Chick-fil-A cup. I just drank out of a styrofoam cup. Nash, I have my Giants cup for White Claws. Nash, I love it. We have, I don't know what my name is in the chat with a HI. What's going on? And Bill says, does Jerry pull the trigger on Bill Belichick? Serious question. I don't think they'd get along at all, though. Wow. Okay. I think that's a really good prediction. I don't know if they would get along, but I also don't know if Bill Belichick, after spending a full season away from football, like Sean Payton took that year off, he's going to be itching. He's going to be itching to get back on that field. I'll be looking to see if he signs any long-term contracts with sports media, whether it's ESPN or Fox or ABC, CBS. But if he doesn't, and McCarthy is a one and done in the playoffs this year, I could see Belichick being willing to compromise with Jerry Jones for the chance to coach it's the Dallas Cowboys. I know you don't like them, but it's the Cowboys. All right. To be the head coach of the Cowboys is something a lot of people don't get to do. I think that could be Bill Belichick's job next year. It's just blowing my mind right now that you said that. Panthers Oilers still tied up. Going to be a banger. Well, Bill is currently busy with his 24-year-old girlfriend. LOL. Bill has a 24-year-old girlfriend? What? Bill? You, Bill? He'll be occupied. I missed something. Nash said, I got to get home and stream who's winning the series. Yeah, who's winning the series right now? By the way, congratulations to JJ Redick. Bill Belichick has a 24-year-old girlfriend. I thought you were talking about you had a 24. I'm like, isn't your wife in the room? Okay. Tied up, 7th game. Wait, Bill Belichick's tied up by his 24-year-old girlfriend? Are those connected, or are you talking about the game tied up? Oh, man. Okay, so Mike McCarthy. Say what you want about the guy. He's won 12 games 3 years in a row. But because we're seeing these signs, the reason I bring this to your attention is because this may not seem like a huge deal now, but if there's some other layers later on in the year where people are getting fed up with the Cowboys, all of a sudden we're going to remember this moment and we're going to say Mike McCarthy is definitely losing his job. The Cowboys haven't given him any job security. McCarthy fed up with Jerry Jones. I could see a divorce coming around the corner, but winning solves everything. If Mike McCarthy wins the Super Bowl, likely he signs a long-term contract with the Cowboys and nothing changes. But that seems like a very big but. And another big but is Brandon Ayuk, who I think has been called thick with 2 Qs from the waist below by every announcer. I don't know if you've seen those announcers where they go, it's like announcers saying things taken out of context. We used to have a whole list of them, but one of them is Troy Aikman talking about Brandon Ayuk. Anyway, there's been trade rumors all offseason. Brandon Ayuk is disgruntled. He's upset. We saw him on FaceTime with, who is he on? Jaden Daniels talking about, they don't want me. The 49ers he was talking about. The latest report comes after more details emerged last Friday as Ayuk and the 49ers worked toward a common ground. Contrary to what Ayuk recently told Commander Jaden Daniels, the 49ers want to keep him and have no desire to trade him, according to ESPN. The issue, however, and might not surprise you, is money. And the 49ers don't want to pay Ayuk what he's currently asking for, per the report. The two sides were reportedly close to getting a deal done earlier this offseason, but that was before the receiver market skyrocketed after Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and Nico Collins all signed hefty new extensions. So while they remain apart with where Ayuk feels that he deserves and what the 49ers are willing to pay, the 49ers have never seriously considered dealing Ayuk this entire offseason. They never apparently made calls to people. They did have talks with the Commanders prior to the draft, but those never got off the ground. I love a report like this. Can I just say something? The 49ers have never, think about that word for a second. Please think about this word. The word never, okay? This is something that I've learned to do in my life. I don't talk in absolutes. And if I do, I tell myself to stop. If you're in a let's use a relationship, okay? Somebody doesn't do the dishes, okay? You wanted them to do the dishes, they didn't do the dishes, and you look at them and say, you never do the dishes. Well, unless they've literally never done the dishes, you are lying. And not only that, but you've discredited yourself because you're not standing on truth. What you could say is, I really would appreciate you if you did those dishes And you could even say, I wanted to say that you never do them, but I know that's not true. So never is a very strong word, just like always. Okay. And you have to be careful how you use it. So right now, we're throwing it out there that the 49ers have never seriously considered dealing Ayuk, followed up with they did have talks with the Commanders prior to the draft, but those got off the ground. Okay? I don't know who's writing this. They must be trying to help the 49ers out, but that's like if I have a girlfriend and I go out and I see some fine woman at the grocery store and I ask her for her name and number and she shoots me down. And then it's like, well, I was never seriously considering it. I mean, the Commanders, those conversations with the Commanders never getting off the ground doesn't mean that the 49ers never seriously considered dealing Ayuk. Because if you were never considering dealing Ayuk, guess what you don't do? Make a phone call. I'll give you an example. The Kansas City Chiefs have never seriously considered dealing Patrick Mahomes. Now, what if that sentence was followed up with, they did have talks with the Broncos, but they never got off the ground? We would all be like, what? They actually picked up the phone about Mahomes? And I was trying to keep rhyming, but I ran out of words. Look, at this point, it appears that Ayuk and the 49ers are at a standstill. So either the two sides are going to find a middle ground, or one side's going to give in, or a breakup is going to occur. Those are the only three options, either in the form of a year-long holdout or a trade. But right now, we're seeing this article written, and it almost feels like somebody is doing the 49ers a favor by saying this, because you could have twisted this in a whole different way, right? You write a story, you bring the news, but you also have the power to influence people based on how you're talking. And the way they're talking here is as if they have the 49ers' best interest in mind, because if you I'm beating a dead horse here, but if you've never considered trading him, then you don't make a phone call. Just because it didn't take off doesn't mean that you weren't considering him. And look, this is the kind of stuff as a player that does bother you. And then you got players all the time that say, oh, it's a business. It's a business. Nothing's off the table. Okay. But that doesn't mean that players really don't care. You know, it does matter to be wanted. It does matter to have job security. It does matter to know where you're going to live for the next couple years. Me and Rick just talked about that last week. The fact is that the 49ers were just trying to see what they could get for Ayuk, and apparently they wanted a lot because the Commanders weren't interested. But just because so it's like, no, you're valuable. You're so valuable to us that we wouldn't even trade you unless it was a bunch. But you're not valuable enough to pay top dollar, right? We see this type of stuff in the NFL all the time. Too valuable to trade, not valuable enough to pay. And it's never going to be an offseason when we're not talking about this, right? And Bill said, Rich Eisen has a sound drop. Never say never, but never. I know. I love that. I forgot that he does that until you brought it up. Nash said, we got a lot of rain in the past couple of days, and I'm taking a route that might save me a half hour. Drive safe out there, buddy. But if it's flooded over, I won't be able to stream Game 7. Just be safe out there. Be safe out there. So, yeah. Last year, Brandon Ayuk had 105 targets, 75 receptions, 1,342 yards, 7 receiving touchdowns. So a really good season. We'll have to wait and see. But is it possible that Brandon Ayuk with the 49ers? I was working on that. I don't think I ever really got to the finish line. But you could see what I was trying to do there. And last, but certainly not least, we're going to talk about the top 20 running backs. CBS put out an article ranking the top 20 running backs for the 2024 season. Now, I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to tell you if I agree or I disagree, because it's not going to be exactly the same. But I'm actually excited about this. We don't get a lot of love to those running backs. They don't get paid. The running back position, though, did have a resurgence last year. I mean, just a year ago in the 2023 offseason, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard all failed to come to terms with their teams on long-term extensions and then settled for the franchise tag. We talked about it. Like, what is going on? Right? There had only been one running back to win NFL Offensive Player of the Year in the last 5 seasons, and it's Derrick Henry. This year, Barkley, Jacobs, and Pollard all found multi-year contracts in free agency. Christian McCaffrey gets paid. He took home Offensive Player of the Year award last year. Raheem Mostert got paid. So things are a lot different this year, right? I would say that there's at least a minor resurgence at the running back position. We're seeing again how valuable running backs are, because you look at the top running backs and you get a lot of playoff teams. Okay. So notable running backs that signed a multi-year contract, just to give you this info. You got Christian McCaffrey, who signed a 2-year, $38 million contract with the 49ers. And I'm going to scroll this across the bottom for you guys. Then you have Derrick Henry. Okay. Derrick Henry signed a 2-year, $16 million contract with the Ravens. Josh Jacobs, 4-year deal. Only 3 running backs signed a 4-year deal. Josh Jacobs signs a 4-year, $48 million deal. Saquon Barkley gets a 3-year, $37 million contract with the Eagles. Ramondre Stevenson, just last week, Thursday, signed a 4-year, $36 million extension with the Patriots. Austin Eckler signs a 4-year, $24.5 million contract with the Commanders. DeAndre Swift signs a 3-year, $24 million contract with the Bears. That's a great move by the Bears. Tony Pollard signs a 3-year, $21 million contract with the Titans. And then Joe Mixon, who is going to be weird to not see him with the Bengals, signs a 2-year, $19.75 million extension with the Texans. The fact that the Texans landed him and Diggs, oh my God. So the running back position might not hold as large of an importance as it once did, especially when we looked at those rushing touchdown records all from 2007. Jamal Williams 2 years ago had 18 rushing touchdowns. That's 15th all time. Okay. But gone are the days of 27, 28 rushing touchdowns in a season. That's just not what the NFL is anymore. The NFL is now geared towards the passing game. But if last year proved that when utilized correctly and with the right pieces around them, a postseason run is possible with a great running back. You saw it with the 49ers reaching the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy, the first Mr. Irrelevant to complete a pass, start a game, or make a Pro Bowl. And a large part of that was due to McCaffrey's all-around contribution. So we're actually seeing just how valuable a running back is. These rankings, though, are going to take both past production and future projections into an account. So we're not just going to look at what these players have proven up to this point. We're going to look at the future and what they're projected to be. There won't be any rookies found on this list because they have yet to be seen playing the position at football's highest level. So we're going to wait on rookies. A year ago, we went over this same list, and it was crazy to have McCaffrey over Derrick Henry or McCaffrey over Nick Chubb, but it turned out to be right. having anyone over CMC this year would be very bold. And that's how people felt last year as well. So we're going to keep that in mind, and we're going to start with number 20. Okay. I'm going to start actually with number 1. Number 1. All right. So number 1. Okay. It just froze up a little bit. Number 1, Christian McCaffrey. Okay. I'm not going to argue with this one. He had a massive season. He's the best running back in football. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. No debate there. Number 2, Derrick Henry. Henry, a 4-time Pro Bowler, ranked inside the top 2 of the entire NFL in both carries and rushing yards in 4 of the last 5 seasons. He's only the 10th player all time to finish inside the top 2 in the league in rushing yards in at least 4 seasons. Henry had 280 carries that led the league last year, while he ranked 2nd in NFL rushing yards, only behind Christian McCaffrey. By the way, he averaged a career worst 4.2 yards per carry. Okay? What I'm trying to say is that's a down year for Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had a down year, and he was the 2nd best running back statistically in the game. The Titans, their offense lacked a passing attack all last season. Will Levis had growing pains. I mean, the team wasn't firing, but Derrick Henry, the Ravens stole him. Yeah, like you might be thinking, oh, he's not in his prime anymore. Talk to me when he's 30, right? This guy's in his 20s still. So, yes, I think Derrick Henry has earned the right to be the number 2 running back. Okay? This one might get a little hairy. We're going to put Bijan Robinson in at number 3. The 3rd best running back is Atlanta Falcons running back Bijan Robinson, the 8th overall pick in 2023. He is on the rise and ready to shine. He had 1,463 yards from scrimmage as a rookie. That was 10th in the league. He had the 6th most among running backs last season. The Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua and his 1,575 yards from scrimmage was the only rookie who ranked higher than 5th. Bijan Robinson's 71 tackles avoided were the 5th most in football during his rookie season. So Bijan Robinson, I mean, exactly what he was advertised to be. He takes another step, and if he does, Bijan Robinson being at number 3, I don't have a problem with it. Okay. Number 4, this is a player that's really good. I saw him in person on the field last year. Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor didn't come close to his 2021 heights last year when he led the NFL in rushing yards with 1,800, 18 touchdowns, and 2,171 scrimmage yards, and 20 touchdowns from scrimmage. He's still only 24 years old, so keep that in mind. He has the potential to get back to playing close to that level. Now he's got a whole offseason. There was contract negotiations. It just didn't get off to a good start. Okay. Number 5, Nick Chubb. Look, before last year, there were a lot of people that were making arguments that Nick Chubb was the best running back in football because of this thing called consistency. He totaled at least 8 rushing touchdowns in every year of his 5-year career, and he's racked up 1,000-yard rushing seasons in each of the last 4 years from 2019 to 2022, 2023, 2024. Look, Nick Chubb, when it comes to consistency, he's the real deal. Now, he did have an injury, so we'll have to wait and see how that's going to affect him, but I got no problem with Nick Chubb being a top 5 running back. Coming in at number 6, you have Breece Hall. And Breece Hall is another player that balled out as a rookie. He suffered a torn ACL that rookie season, but last year he had 1,585 yards. And he didn't even get into form, it felt like, until later in the season. The only player that he was trailing as far as scrimmage yards go is Christian McCaffrey. That was a down year for him. And his elusiveness didn't take a hit. He avoided 79 tackles, second most in the entire league, behind only Travis Etienne. And Breece Hall finished the season really strong, leading in scrimmage yards and touches, while leading the league in touchdowns from week 16, 17, and 18. Should Breece Hall continue to play at this level and get back, because it's like every running back, you tear your ACL, you come back the next season, and the year after is when you really get back to full form. The same thing happened to Saquon Barkley. So let's put Saquon Barkley here at number 7. Okay. Saquon Barkley put together a decent season last year. He had 1,242 yards, 962 rushing. That's total scrimmage yards, that 1,242. 10 scrimmage touchdowns, 6 rushing, 288 touches. But his efficiency wasn't great. He averaged 4.3 yards per carry, or actually 4.3 yards per touch and 3.9 yards per carry. That's not good. But Saquon Barkley is a freaking beast. Now, this is going to be interesting because it does feel like we're at a fork in the road. Is Saquon Barkley still in his prime? Or is what happened to Ezekiel Elliott about to happen to Saquon Barkley? I don't think so. I think Saquon's still got a lot of good ball left in him. And I think that he's going to be on a really good team with the Eagles. I think that'll help him out. At number 8, Jahmyr Gibbs. Okay. Another rookie last year that had lofty expectations. He was drafted 12th overall last year, and he lived up to the hype, even sharing a backfield with David Montgomery. He became just the 8th rookie in the 21st century to total more than 900 rushing yards, with at least 10 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, while averaging at least 5 yards a carry. And he averaged 5.2, third most in the NFL among running backs last year. The company Gibbs keeps with his rookie year production is among some of the best all time. Rookie running backs. Here's a list of rookie running backs with at least 900 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns as a rookie, and averaging at least 5 yards per carry since 2000. Okay. Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Adrian Peterson, Maurice Jones-Drew, Clinton Portis, and Mike Anderson. I loved Mike Anderson, man. And Bill said, well, our O-line sucked. He'll do better behind the Eagles line. I bet that kills you to say that. I bet that just destroyed you. Don't lie to me, Bill. All right. Josh Jacobs coming in at number 9. This is interesting because Jacobs entered 2023 as the reigning NFL rushing champion, leading the league in rushing yards, 1,653 in 2022. Okay. And then he held out for a long-term deal that never actually happened last year. And for the Raiders, they're probably happy that it didn't, because he only had 805 rushing yards. So he definitely had a down year. He only played in 13 games. But part of that might have been that Josh Jacobs wasn't being paid. He wasn't emotionally invested into the game. The Packers paid him. They got a young team. I think Josh Jacobs is going to have a bounce-back season. I could see him being in the top 10. And the person he's replacing, who is now with the purple carnation, Aaron Jones, comes in at number 10. Okay? The Packers asked Aaron Jones to take a pay cut in consecutive off seasons, which bothered him. Green Bay just signed Josh Jacobs around the time they asked Jones to take that cut, and they granted his wish for free agency and released him. So Jones took a page out of Hall of Famer Brett Favre's spite playbook and signed with the Minnesota Vikings. And you look at how good Aaron Jones was in those playoff games. He was a big reason Green Bay was having success. Of course, Jordan Love was, but Aaron Jones was playing really good football in January. I know that whenever a player is a little bit older and he joins a new team. In our heads, we kind of are like, oh, okay, his prime is over. Don't forget what Aaron Jones looked like last time you saw him on the field. Coming in at number 11, we had Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne, he was NFL's best last year when it came to rushing touchdowns. He put together a second 1,000-yard rushing season. He had 1,008 yards last year. He more than doubled his rushing touchdown figure his rookie season. He had 5, and he had 11 last year. His 89 tackles avoided last season led the entire NFL, and his scrimmage yards were the 5th most among running backs. But the problem was efficiency plummeted last year, with his yards per carry declining from 5.1 to 3.8 on 267 carries. Not all that was his fault. Jacksonville was assessed 40.6 run block grade by PFF, the second worst in the entire NFL. And when you keep that in mind, all of a sudden these stats are really good. You're saying this was the second worst run block team in the NFL, and Travis Etienne had some of the best numbers in the league. These are a couple things that the Jags need to get right. I still think the Jags could go to an AFC Championship game. They paid Trevor Lawrence. They made some additions. Imagine if that offensive line gets better at run blocking. Travis Etienne could really have a monster season. Raheem Mostert at number 12. And Raheem Mostert, you could say he's in his prime despite his age because he's a late bloomer. He earned his first career Pro Bowl selection at 31 years old, but he definitely earned it. He led the league last year with 18 rushing touchdowns, and he co-led the league in touchdowns from scrimmage, and he was only second to Christian McCaffrey. He also ran over 1,000 yards on 209 carries, and he had 4.6 yards per carry. And most of that was because of the Broncos game. Bill said, just curious, is Singletary even on the list? 800 plus yards. And we're almost there. We're at 13. I don't want to spoil anything. Kenneth Walker coming in at 13. He's still 23 years old. He'll turn 24 in October. He still offers plenty of promise. I drafted him up on my personal fantasy football team. He was really good as a rookie. Last year, you would like to see a little more consistency out of him, but Walker was really explosive. He had an explosive rate of 8.7, which ranked 11th in the NFL, while his team wasn't as good as they were the year before. If Walker becomes more consistent, his potential is sky high. Kenneth Walker really showed what he was capable of 2 years ago. He's 23 years old. I mean, that's a good run. And we'll do another young running back, Kyren Williams. Okay. Kyren Williams erupted for 1,144 rushing yards, third most in the NFL. We didn't even know who this guy was for the beginning of the last season, unless you're a big Rams fan. He only played 12 games because of an ankle injury. He missed weeks 7 through 11 last season. Think about this. Williams led the NFL in rushing yards per game with 95.3 average, and he's the first player to finish in the top 3 in rushing yards despite missing at least 4 games, since Bull Carcass did it for the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1937. Let me say that one more time. The last time a running back was in the top 5 in rushing yards per game, or in rushing yards per season, and also missed 5 games, was 1937. Okay? I mean, that is ludicrous. That is absolutely mind-blowing. The 5th most rushing yards in the NFL, and he missed weeks 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So yeah, of course he led the league in rushing yards per game, but Kyren Williams, if he has a full, healthy season ahead of him, like maybe we're going to see something, but we've seen the sophomore slump that you guys have been talking about with CJ Stroud. I think it's more common with running backs. Remember Dameon Pierce? He was on track to break Houston Texans' single-season rushing record, and he wasn't even the best running back on his team last year, I don't think. They got, who was it? The running back he was with Pittsburgh for a while, went to BCU. I can't remember his name right now. I got to look it up. Steelers running back. Oh, well, he's not the Steelers anymore. Okay, Dameon Pierce. Who else? Well, now they have Joe Mixon. Regardless, we see running backs do this. Kyron Williams, the expectations are going to be really high because of what he did. I mean, he's a 5th-round draft pick out of Notre Dame, and he only played 10 games. If he can really put together a full season with the same production he had last year, watch out. Coming in at 15, Tony Pollard totaled consecutive 1,000-yard rushing seasons, but the 2023 season was understandably a grind. Pollard's 1,005 rushing yards last season came on 252 carries, a career high, and he had a 4.0 yards per carry average. That was a departure from 2023, in which he had 5.2 yards per carry on 193 carries, which resulted in a career high in rushing yards. The difference can be explained by the leg fracture he suffered in the 2022 NFC divisional round against the 49ers. For Pollard's first 4 seasons from 2019 to 2022, he averaged 5.7 yards per touch from scrimmage, the 4th best in the NFL among 32 players with at least 500 touches in that span. His yards per touch figure in 2023 dipped down to 4.3. Pollard should perform better as Derrick Henry's successor with the Titans, another year removed from injury. And like we keep saying, it's the second year coming out of an injury. Tony Pollard's in that second year, but a new system, a new team. I don't know if he's going to get back to where he was, but potential's totally there. James Conner. That's who I was thinking of, but that was the wrong team because he plays for the Falcons. James Conner, 28.8% tackles avoided, ranked as the second best in the NFL. James Conner is still playing good football. James Conner was not done when he left Pittsburgh. He's finding his best performance entering his late 20s, and Conner's production could increase. I don't think it will because I think Trey Benson is going to win the starting job. But Kyler Murray's going to be healthier. Marvin Harrison's going to be there. I don't know if I would have James Conner this high, but that's because I'm so high on Trey Benson. Then you get to Devon Achane. Okay, so Dolphins are the first team to have 2 running backs in the top 20. Achane's explosive run rate, the percentage of his carries going 12 yards or more, was 15.5% of his runs. That led the entire NFL. And he was just over 2.5% higher than Christian McCaffrey. So the 2.6% gap between Achane and McCaffrey is around the same gap between McCaffrey and Achane's backfield mate, Raheem Mostert, whose 10.5% rate was the 7th most in the NFL. Naturally, Achane's 7.8 yards per carry led the NFL among 53 players over 100 carries. Look, this guy's, you guys know how I felt about him when he was being drafted. This is somebody I was hoping the Broncos would draft. They didn't. The Dolphins picked right after the Broncos and drafted him. And I was so heartbroken, especially now that I'm seeing him ball out. And not just ball out, but ball out on my team. In the Dolphins' 70-20 demolishment of the Denver Broncos, a game that I was at, Achane ran for the Dolphins' single-game rookie rushing record. He had 203 carries. Get this, on only 18 carries. 203 yards on 18 carries. That's 11.3 yards per carry. He found the end zone 4 times at that game. Twice on the ground, twice through the air as a receiver. When the 2023 season wrapped up in January, Achane's 203 rushing yards versus the Broncos still ranked as the most in a single game out of all running backs for the entire year. So, Devon Achane, he's exactly what he's advertised to be. Actually, he wasn't advertised. I was advertising him. But yeah, there's going to be a couple running backs like that this year. Trey Benson wasn't the first running back taken. I think he's going to emerge as the best. DeAndre Swift, okay? DeAndre Swift in his first and only season with the Eagles. And the Eagles have a pretty good offensive line. Pro Football Focus run block grade was 76.5, third best in the NFL. Swift broke the 1,000-yard mark for the first time in his 4-year career with 1,049 rushing yards, the most in the NFL last season. His 5.3 career yards per touch average ranked 7th most in the NFL since he was drafted. Okay, this is a guy that has consistently showed up every single season since he's been drafted. Now, the Bears were kind of playing musical chairs with their running backs. David Montgomery was a Bear. The Bears let him go. He goes to the Lions. DeAndre Swift, who was on the Lions, is now on the Bears. Aaron Jones, who was on the Packers, is now on the Vikings. But what remains is that Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, these are all really good running backs. And the Bears might not be able to go back into the pass and keep David Montgomery, but they can take DeAndre Swift. And somehow that feels like it tilts it back to close to even. Coming in at number 19, we have Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco, he's just fun to watch. The way he runs, his body just flying all over the field. He plays much bigger than he appears. His 1.52 yards before contact per rush ranked as the 8th most in the NFL among 35 running backs with 150 carries at least, which indicates as much with defenses struggling to anticipate which direction he's initially headed. He improved his overall rushing numbers from his rookie year, where he had 935 and 7 touchdowns, but his efficiency dipped slightly. He went from 4.9 yards per carry and 5 touchdowns to 4.6 yards per carry. Pacheco's the first running back in NFL history to start and win the Super Bowl in each of his first 2 seasons, and he will certainly factor into Kansas City's efforts for a three-peat next year. But what a stat for Isaiah Pacheco. First player ever to win a Super Bowl in their first 2 seasons. Imagine Dan Marino. Going his whole life being one of the greats, and then seeing Isaiah Pacheco have already 2 of his 5 fingers filled up with Super Bowl rings, and he's only been in the league for 2 years. Hard not to be salty about that, right? And then coming in at number 20. So, Bill, we do not have Singletary on this list, but Jaylen Warren, he ranked as the NFL's most elusive running back last season with 35.6% tackle avoided rate, the best among 49 running backs with at least 100 carries in 2023. Warren's 76 tackles avoided ranked as tied for 3rd most in the NFL last season, and he was tied with Kenneth Walker. The formerly undrafted running back totaled career highs across the board thanks to a higher workload in year 2. He had 784 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, and 149 carries. He had 5.3 yards per carry last year, ranked as the 3rd most in the NFL among the 49 running backs with at least 100 carries. Najee Harris, also in the backfield, had 4.1 yards per carry. That ranked 27th out of those 49. So perhaps Warren will be given a larger volume this year with new offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, But I think it's also logical to think that Najee Harris, who didn't have his fifth-year option picked up, is going to have a bounce-back season, especially with Arthur Smith being a run-first type of guy. So I wouldn't necessarily look at these numbers and say Jaylen Warren's going to be on the field more than Najee Harris. I would say right now it's probably 50-50. But if Jaylen Warren comes out and he's clearly the better running back, that's it for Najee Harris in Pittsburgh. That's it. Especially if you got a guy that's undrafted, much cheaper than that first-round pick that they spent on Najee Harris. So those are the top 20 running backs. Honestly, I don't agree with, I don't think anything. I really don't. Kyron Williams, I think he could be ahead of Kenneth Walker. No, I like this list a lot. I don't have any problems with it, but let me know in the comments if you guys agree with it, disagree with it, hate it, love it, like it. As always, you can follow me on X at NFL with Kyle, and you can follow Rick, who is dealing with flu-like symptoms, at And Now Rick. Please like this video, share it with your friends and family. I want to give a shout out to Bill and Nash for being active in the comments. We had KC in here as well, and we also had Jinja, and I don't know what my name is. Just wanted to say thank you guys for being here. The off season can be a dry time, but I like to have, it gives you more time to do other stuff. During the season, you're just evaluating. This is kind of cool to take a step back and talk about these type of subjects. So glad that you guys are here for it. You can follow my personal YouTube channel at Kyle Kitzman, and I've been posting stuff there. You can catch me going live there as well. But I just wanted to shout out everybody. Your name is Kyle. My name is Kyle, and Bill's right. Take lots of zinc, get some vitamin D, and we will see you guys on Thursday for another episode of Only Football. You guys are beautiful. I love all of you. I can't wait to see you again. Have a great night. And by the way, it's June 24th. My blast wound happened June 23rd. So every 23rd kind of feels like a birthday. Even more so than my actual birthday, because it's like, it's just, I'm so lucky to be alive. I'm so lucky to be here doing this podcast. And I just want you all to know that I don't take the being alive for granted. And I hope that helps me deliver a better product. I hope that you guys can see how much that we care about this. And hopefully the quality is getting better as we continue to have more years under our belt. Naturally, I would hope that it progresses in a way where we're getting better at what we're doing. So hopefully that'll continue to happen. But yeah, thank you guys for everything. And I will see you guys on Thursday. And I could see you guys earlier than that if you go to my personal channel. But that's all I got. See